So let's go ahead and talk about UFC Kansas City. So I highly recommend, as for most pay-per-views, as for all pay-per-views even, I highly recommend you guys watch the prelims, because this is where we're going to be able to discover new fighters, get to know new people, and of course, find out who's going to be the next star, or who are going to be the next stars for their divisions. Notable fights to look out for on the prelim card of UFC Kansas City is, of course, the fight between Malcolm Wellmaker and his opponent Cameron Saman. Saman we've already seen a few times at UFC, but I wanted to talk more about Malcolm Wellmaker, who made a huge splash at Dana White's Contender Series. So I think this fight is one to look out for, to see if Malcolm is going to be what we hope he will be in the bantamweight division. He has 8 victories, 0 defeats, and he made waves at the UFC's Contender Series with a huge knockout to earn himself a contract, and we've not seen him since. So this is going to be really his chance to show what he's made of on a real UFC card, and I can't wait to see it. Another fight to look out for on the prelims is Damon Blackshear. He's going to be back for a fight against Alateng Haley. So we've seen Blackshear quite a few times. I think he's quite a hit and miss fighter, because as he's a veteran fighter at the UFC, he's been around for a while. He's 30 years old now. I think we've seen him on quite a few cards, but mostly on prelims and maybe a few main cards when it was the Apex or something. And I hope for him that he's going to be able to show what he's made of. I'm looking out for Damon Blackshear. I hope he's going to get a win in this fight and back into the win column, so he can show Dana White that he deserves a place on the main card of another card coming up later on this year. We'll see. So let's go into the main card. This is going to be quite explosive and quite exciting, I think. Of course, we'll talk about this later, but we've got Anthony Smith doing his farewell tour, his last fight. I saw him talking about this on a podcast earlier this week. He was saying, I think even though I've not earned a title in my career, I should be proud of what I've achieved at the UFC. And I think I'm too hard on myself sometimes. I'm not proud of myself enough, just because I've not had a belt wrapped around my waist. But I've been close to getting a belt wrapped around my waist. I've been very much, in the nitty gritty with the best of all of them. So I totally agree with him. Like, he's someone that was a staple at the UFC for quite a few years. So seeing him say farewell after this fight, whether he wins or loses, is going to be sad to see. As we saw in his last fight against Dominic Reyes, he was even asking Dominic to hit him because he wanted to feel something. So it was very sad to see him go down like that, but obviously it was because he lost his coach, who unfortunately died. So I think he lost a bit of his spark, and he knew at that time that maybe it was time to hang the gloves up. But I'm happy he didn't hang the gloves up after his fight against Dominic Reyes. Congratulations obviously to Dominic Reyes, because he's been doing bits since he came back to the UFC with a 3-fight win streak, 3 KOs in the first or second round of his fight. So happy for Dominic Reyes, but obviously seeing Anthony Smith go down like that wasn't the best of things. So I'm happy he's back for his last fight officially. So first fight on the main card of UFC Kansas City, Ian Machado Garry versus Carlos Prates. We have, of course, Ikram Aliskerov and Andrew Muniz, who are going to be fighting. Very excited to see Aliskerov back. We last saw him, if you guys remember, at UFC's Abu Dhabi card, with the main event being him versus the one and only Robert Whittaker. It was supposed to be Whittaker versus Chimaev, which we obviously saw later on, and we know how that went down. But obviously Aliskerov came in last minute. He seemed ready to go up against the best of them, and unfortunately he was just not what it took to beat a legend like Robert Whittaker, who KO'd him in the first round. So congratulations to Robert. But Aliskerov coming off this big KO loss, I'm seeing Aliskerov going back into the win column and winning this fight against Muniz in a late stoppage or a decision. That's my opinion on that one. Next up, we have Randy Brown versus Nicholas Dalby. I love Randy Brown. I think he's really good. This welterweight fighter, he's got a lot of potential. He's 34, so he's on the tail end of his career, but I think he's got a few more years left in him. And I see him winning against Nicholas Dalby, honestly. Dalby being 40 years old, great fighter. Only 5 losses on his record with 23 wins. Not an easy fight for Randy Brown, but I think Randy Brown will get this victory in, and I think he'll win via first or second round stoppage. Next up, we have Michel Pereira versus Abus Magomedov. According to betting odds, Michel Pereira is a favorite in this fight, and I'm going to go with Michel Pereira as well. He's such a unique, stylistically, he's got such a unique style that I don't see Magomedov being able to counter him very much because he's so unique. You can almost see him in like a video game, you know, like Tekken or something, bouncing off the cage walls and everything. He's just so entertaining when you see him in a ring. So I really think Michel Pereira will win this fight, and I think he'll get a second or third round stoppage or a decision. This fight could likely go to a decision, but I'm hoping Michel Pereira will pull off a second or third round stoppage by KO. Next up, we have Shigades versus David Onama. In this featherweight fight, Shigades, who is a great fighter, he's got a great record of 15 wins to 4 losses to Onama's 13 wins to 2 losses. I truly believe that David Onama will win this fight, and I think he'll get it done by decision or a late stoppage, but most likely a decision. I don't think Shigades has what it takes to beat Onama on Saturday night. Next up, we have, of course, the co-main event of the evening, Anthony Smith versus Ming Yang, who has accepted to do this last leg of Anthony's retirement tour. And as I was saying earlier, this is Anthony Smith's last fight in the UFC Octagon. He's obviously started doing a lot of ESPN work on the mic. He's been doing a lot of commentating. He's got some podcasts going on. So he's set himself up for a nice, lengthy career in UFC and combat sports commentating. So I'm not worried at all for Anthony Smith's future. In this fight, I do believe that he has a lot of disadvantages going into this fight against Ming Yang. He's 10 years older than Ming Yang. He's 36. Ming Yang's 26. Ming Yang being the less experienced fighter on the in this fight, but he's currently at 18 wins and 6 losses. Most of his wins via KO. I honestly don't see Anthony Smith being able to win against Ming Yang, but I think he'll give it his all to not be knocked out in the first or second. So I think if Ming Yang wins this fight, which I think is most likely, Ming Yang will win via late stoppage or decision. And that will be the end of Anthony Smith's career. Good luck to Anthony for his future. And of course, the main event of the evening. I wanted to talk a bit more broadly about this fight before going into my predictions of this fight. There have been a lot of back and forths on social media between Garry and Prates. Both men speak in Portuguese, of course, seeing as Ian has married into a Brazilian family and Carlos is Brazilian. So both guys are able to communicate in English and in Portuguese. Prates saying that Ian Garry's never headlined a card like this. He's only headlined one card in a main event, and Carlos Prates has headlined 2 cards in the main event. And he's had already in the UFC, only with 4 fights at the UFC, he's already had 2 bonuses. Ian Machado Garry has never had a bonus yet. So the one thing I wanted to say about this was just fighting styles, because Ian Machado Garry has a fighting style that we saw in Cage Warriors. He was very explosive. He knocked out a lot of his opponents. He's submitted a lot of his opponents as well. But once coming to the UFC at the higher level, I would say he's probably kept it a bit more safe. And he has, of course, been up against some of the best in the business in the welterweight division. So I don't blame him for playing it safe in order to get the decision win. But we are seeing an Ian Garry who can be explosive, but is not always explosive, against someone like Carlos Prates, who is very, very explosive. I just forgot one thing, however. I think you might know what I'm going to be talking about. I couldn't be talking about a Carlos Prates fight without putting on my Fighting Nerds glasses, because of course Carlos Prates is one of the founding members of the Fighting Nerds, along with Rufi, Jean Silva and Caio Borralho, which make up a foursome who are extremely dangerous at the moment. And this is his 5th fight in the UFC. And I really hope that he wins, because he won't lose his 0 at the UFC. He's obviously got a pro record of 21 victories to 6 defeats. But in the UFC, he is 4-0 for now. So will that be going up? This is absolutely his biggest test yet for Carlos Prates. I think that up until now, he's not fought the best of the best in the welterweight division. So we're really seeing him coming up to a point now where he can really prove himself as someone who is solidified in this division. So this is a really big fight for Carlos Prates. If he wins, he will be able to be a ranked UFC welterweight fighter at number 7, and also be able to say I beat Ian Garry, who was at one point seen as the new Conor McGregor, the prodigy, the Irish prodigy, who has come into the UFC with only now one defeat against Shavkat Rakhmonov. But Ian Garry, being the more well-rounded fighter that he's very dangerous for Carlos Prates and for his record at the UFC. So I think for either guys, this is not an easy fight, seeing as Carlos Prates is really quick on the feet and a really dangerous fighter. Now, when I talk about what could happen in this fight, I think honestly that this fight will go the distance. I don't think this fight will end in the first or second round. I think that this fight will end in a finish, because Ian Garry has made it out his mission to finish Carlos Prates. After all the back and forth they've been having, after saying what they had to say to each other, after criticizing their training styles, the fact that Prates smokes, the fact that Ian Garry has never headlined a card apart from one, never had a bonus, all those back and forths, Ian Garry has said, I'm going to finish Carlos Prates, and Carlos Prates obviously always wants to finish his opponents. So I honestly think this fight won't go the distance to the 5th round, but I think that we'll be getting a 3rd, 4th, or 5th round finish. And in my opinion, the person who will be finishing the fight will be Ian Garry. I feel like a hypocrite now that I've put my glasses on, and I'm very much a fan of the Fighting Nerds, and I hope that Carlos Prates wins. But if I were to give my honest opinion on the two fighters, I think that Ian Garry will win this fight, and I hope that Carlos Prates proves me wrong. What do you guys think of this fight card? Who have you got for this fight card, and what fights are you most excited to see? And most importantly, let me know what you think of Ian Garry versus Carlos Prates. Is Carlos Prates the real deal? Has he got what it takes to beat an Ian Garry? Or do you think, like me, that despite what we've seen from Carlos Prates up until now, that he'll be stopped in his tracks by Ian Garry and left to wait again for another opportunity to get into that top 10 and in the welterweight division? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. So that's going down on Saturday. Here in France, the prelims are starting at midnight and the main card is starting at 3 a.m. So I will be tuning in however late it is for that card.